Welcome back, Looney listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Connor.
And I'm your other host, Ray. And this episode we'll be looking at the final part of Incarnations by Jeff Lemire, Volume 8, Issue 9. We'll also be looking into a classic run, Moonlight Volume 1, Issue 24, The Return of Stained Glass Scarlet. So, grab your issues, sit back, relax, and get your Khonshu on.
Ray. It's episode 9. Episode 10, quite technically. Episode and all.
Yeah, that's true.
It's another exciting episode. We've got a bit of news to discuss. We got some great issues, some great art, and that's a good.
That's a good. Well, yeah, no, it's, there's plenty to talk about here. We're up to the last part of Lemire's second arc, so exciting to see how he wraps up this one. A bit of news, a bit of the kind of same kind of well-trodden territory of who you'd like to see like on screen and all that. But it's I'm glad to be back here and to get right into it.
But before we get on to our news, what have you been reading, Ray? Bit of bounce outside of our regular Moon Knight discussion.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought it was really cool to discuss all those comics last episode. So, just reading this week, catching up on my pools. So a bit of Valiant, Faith in the Future Force, number 3, I think it is. Also, the War Mother 2, which is another Valiant title I'm really loving at the moment. I've still got Exo on my pile, waiting to read that. But Legacy was the big Marvel one for me. It was a great issue. What were your thoughts on it?
Oh, I thought it was fantastic. Not enough mention of our Moon Knight, sadly. But there was a lot of setup. I think anyone following Marvel at the moment, even if it's just our Moon Knight issues, should pick it up. I think it's great overall. Jason Aaron's an amazing writer. There's so many little bits set up that can't help it.
Yeah, for sure. He's done really well, Jason Aaron. What I was really impressed with how he kind of pulled everything together. So many characters and so many arcs across the Marvel titles. And for those that do collect a few titles across Marvel, you would recognize some of the the current trends that are happening within those books. So for me, one of the highlights was definitely seeing Norman Osborn trying to crack into the Sanctum Sanctorum of Doctor Strange, because I believe you got that issue as well, kind of with Greg Smallwood for Amazing Spider-Man.
Sure did.
And I think it's long enough to not spoil anything, but he's actually on the hunt for some magic now, so it's good to see that in there. And it was also good to see, just on the other end of the spectrum, Gamora from the Guardians of the Galaxy, currently written by Jerry Duggan, and Gamora's on the hunt for some of the stones as well. So you're starting to see everything kind of tie together, and I just thought it was brilliant with a team of artists as well.
Yeah, everyone from their own titles, if you haven't read it, jumps back on, try little bits. You had Russell Dorderman, everyone else.
Chris Sumney was in there, I think.
Totally, yep.
As well. There was just a whole lot of them, but I recognise Chris Sumney from the Captain America little cameo, and he'll be tackling the Legacy Captain America with Mark Waid, right? Is that's correct? Yeah.
Yeah. Daniel Arcuna, Jim Chung, Stuart Eminem, Greg Land, all those classic great people.
Yeah. It's really great, and a huge 60-page issue. I didn't find it lengthy at all. I really enjoyed it.
Like I said, Aaron really pulled it all together.
He did. He's such a great writer. So what else were you reading during this last week?
I've had a pretty small week, sort of catching up. I've bought a new mic coming in. Anyone dealing with this old Echo and old set, but you'll be getting out of the other void. Yeah, well, I think it's more the fact I just sold my soul while I was there to get new equipment. If I'm stuck here for good, I might as well, pay for something good. I think one of some past alumni, actually, Jeff Lemire's new Bloodshot Salvation issue 1.
Oh, yes.
With a variant
yes.
cover by Greg Smallwood. Everyone should check that out as well. It was a great issue. If you love Lemire, if you love, this run of Moon Knight, you definitely owe it yourself to check it out. Go back and read his Bloodshot Reborn as well, which follows directly into it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Have you got that in hard copy, Connor? Or?
No, I have it coming in, but I had to get digital for now.
Yeah,
and, actually, I read some of the classic EC comics, the old sort of 50s, 60s horror. I picked up one of those collections, actually, and it's sort of old classic horror, when you think about it, not too far behind, what we're covering with Doug Munch, and, they're sort of going back and see the inspirations for even some of Moon Knight with how sort of moody and atmospheric it is. It's quite a history lesson, actually.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. And had you, I remember last episode you mentioned picking up a bit of Doug Munch's Batman run. Had you managed to read up on any of them?
No, I haven't just yet, but as soon as I do, I shall report back.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's good. Yeah, great. So, I mean, it was a bit of a lean week. I think next week is even leaner from what I remember in my League of Geeks pull list. But no, should be good. But anyway, I think we should crack on to actually a bit more Moon Knight focused stuff.
Yeah, what's it? Is it now 5 more weeks, 6 more weeks until the big debut of issue 1? So we're really just sort of biding our time. So
exciting!
But to almost, I'll bring up where this ties into Legacy. Actually, our first bit of news is Jake Thomas, editor for the upcoming Moon Knight, and does the Defenders, the Iron Fist, that sort of almost street level. He sort of covers as the big editor for all that. He put up a tweet saying, "No image, sadly. Just did a lettering press against art for at Max Bemis's and at Jason's art. Moon Knight first issue. I literally have goosebumps. Holy smokes."
Yeah, that's such a great thing. That brought a smile to my face as well, and it's good to see that Jake Thomas is back as well. He was the editor for the Moon Knight run with Jeff Lemire, so he did a bang up job. And actually, we have been very terrible to Jake in our reviews of the Lemire issues. We haven't mentioned the editor, so this one will definitely add Jake Thomas as editor. But he's doing a great job, and it'll be great for him to be back on the horse with Max Bemis and Jason Burrows.
Yes. Actually, and how this ties into Legacy. This week they put out like a one of those those free previews you get on Comixology.
Oh yes, yep.
And it didn't have any...
sorry, is that the primer pages?
No, it's if you search into Comixology Legacy free preview guide. It's basically a little
yes, okay.
I don't know how many pages, but just like the sort of couple pages, a bit of introduction, the covers of some of the Legacy issues coming out. So we had Hulk, Spirits of Vengeance, and just a bunch of other issues. And since he doesn't reference, possibly the whole issue, and just said a lettering pass against art for the first issue, it could be the whole issue, but that possibly sort of almost makes me think we may be seeing another Legacy free preview that'll have a page for Moon Knight in it, possibly. So definitely keep your eyes peeled on Comixology, or maybe they ship out to comic book stores. I don't know. I got mine on Comixology. But definitely keep a lookout for Legacy previews. We may have another look at Moon Knight before we know it. Yeah,
that'd be great. Something to kind of stem the tide, until we actually get the issues. It's been a while now that we've been talking about it, and there's still a bit more time to go. But look, I think we've just got to sit on our hands and just wait. And once it hits, hopefully our expectations are met. I believe it will be. But we'll just we have to play the waiting game, I guess.
Yeah, I mean because we actually haven't seen a proper Marvel posted online preview of it yet. We've seen it was posted on Twitter, but that's really it. So we still are due for our little preview. So definitely keep your eyes peeled over these next coming weeks for something a bit more concrete when it comes to previews.
Yeah. But yeah, good pick up on that Jake Thomas tweet. That was really good.
Yeah, no, I mean it just gets me so excited. I mean, the only thing we've heard from Jake Thomas and Alex Alonso, editor in chief, is just like how blown away they are, and just sort of almost seems like Jeff Lemire just such a strange, out there, and just unlike any other superhero comic we're reading at the time, which is what you want from Moon Knight. And it just seems like that's what we're hearing, and that's what we want.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, of course they always promote all the material from Marvel, but it just seems like with Moon Knight, the editors and the writers, they seem to kind of, I don't know, have a bit more of a spring in their step when they talk about Moon Knight. That's just me. I think they're really excited at the fact. I think they know that Moon Knight has a smaller fan base, but is known now for really good writers and really good art. So they've just got to make sure that they keep that standard up, and it sounds like they are. So yeah, can't wait.
Yeah. For our next piece of news, just sort of a classic, we want this on TV sort of article. Heroic Hollywood put up a article saying the 6 superheroes who deserve animated shows.
Yes, there were 6 of them from different, different companies as well. So we have, the 6 of them are basically She-Hulk, The Question, Moon Knight, Constantine, Spawn, and Zatanna. So I'm not too familiar with a few of them, Connor, so I'm hoping you might be able to help me out. But let's start with She-Hulk. She-Hulk as an animated series goes. What do you reckon?
Now, let me get a bit of a rant about animation, because I feel it is the single most untapped resource of the comic book industry, and I cry every day at the fact we don't see it pump more. I mean, obviously I love live action. We want Moon Knight live action. Take Moon Knight animated as well, happily. But I think just in the grand scheme of things, we see this entire dedication to live action. I think the craziness and style of comic books lend itself so much to animation. You know, with manga, the entire, nearly every adaptation of manga is anime over in Japan. You know, animation, because that's how we can see it realized. And I think Marvel and DC especially just aren't, I think, putting in the budget and the resources to see great returns on amazing animated things we could see happening. Even DC and Marvel's animated kids shows, they're great, but I feel like even more support, we could see something really incredible coming out of there, and I think it's just so untapped, and so, yeah, just sad. And I think if we'll go on to She-Hulk, we talked about last time when it came to an article talking about a She-Hulk live action show. I think I'd almost love sort of her own Netflix-styled universe where, like a She-Hulk animated show, a Hellcat animated show, and a Spider-Woman animated show could almost be the Defenders universe of it, like an animated series. I think that could be so cool. So, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, actually. And yeah, I mean, you raise definitely some really, really valid points in the fact that there aren't enough. Definitely from the Marvel side of it, I feel. I've heard from the DC side, from fans, that DC animated stuff is really good. Like, the quality is really high, and I can't really speak too much about it because I haven't watched that many. But yeah, there definitely could be more. And the beauty with animated series are that you aren't as restricted with your budget, so to speak. So in this first thing with She-Hulk, one of the limiting things would be in a live action like Netflix series is that you're constricted with what she can do, because, and obviously how she looks as well. But in an animated series, you can have her, lifting buildings or something really crazy that it would be really hard to do as a live action. So I definitely, totally agree with you, Connor, as well. Also, the anime aspect of it. I'm not sure if you've I've watched. Marvel did this collaboration with an anime company a while ago, and they released a few things. There was a Wolverine series, an X-Men series as well. All really styled like a manga anime style cartoon. Really good, actually. The quality was awesome. And my favorite is still there was one called, I think, Avengers Confidential, something like that, and it had Black Widow and the Punisher in there, and Shield as well. So it had Nick Fury, and that just rocked. I mean. The animation was like top notch, like what I'd expect, or what I'd expect to see from a manga like anime. But the story was great. It was violent as well. We're not talking about a Saturday morning cartoon, which is nothing wrong with a Saturday morning cartoon as well. But it was more. It was a bit edgier, and it had cameos from the Hulk and Iron Man and Amadeus Cho. So it was pretty cool to watch. And yeah, I feel definitely that there is a bit of a hole in that market, and I think yeah, Marvel should really consider it. There were also Lionsgate animated films. Connor, I'm not sure. Did you watch? There was one on Iron Man.
Yeah, I watched the Iron Man one.
Yeah, they were good. I thought they were pretty decent. I liked the Doctor Strange one. There was a Wolverine, I think, versus the Hulk, and I think what was it, Hulk versus Thor, something like that. And actually had a little Deadpool in there as well, and he was brilliant. So it just shows what can be done, and yeah, they should actually kind of tap that resource a bit more, I think. But yeah, She-Hulk will be great with it. And if you have a Defenders-style She-Hulk animated series with Hellcat in another and Spider-Woman, and then they come together, that would be something different. And I think it would actually get a lot of interest.
Yeah, and actually, just talking about, if we talk about Moonlight, then as we talk about the animated shows, I think I'd love almost, we're talking about that anime style. I think because obviously we want him in the Netflix. I think he will be in the Netflix, definitely in the coming years. I'd love for like an animated movie to maybe do like an alternate universe spin, like do something sort of really fun and outlandish that doesn't have to tie into any sort of canon, and they can just have this crazy one-shot movie. It could just be a lot of fun.
Oh, for Moon Knight?
Yeah. If we're gonna see him in the Netflix series coming.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it just earlier today. I think as on-screen presences go, I reckon definitely my preference would be a Netflix series by Moon Knight, and then I think it would be a regular animated series by Moon Knight. I think that would be pretty cool. And from what you said, I think I'd actually put that in number 3 as a standalone animated series, like have it really kind of dark. I think that'd be, or have something totally different. I'd be open to that. And then actually at the end, I would put him. I'd least like to see him in an on-screen film, live-action film.
Yeah, no, that's really It's just sort of, that's its own sort of part of the MCU, and there's a reason we have the more violent street level, and I think sort of having him on the big screen in that different environment kind of nulls a lot of what we love about the moodiness of Moon Knight.
I mean, the only reason it's sounding really kind of indulgent now, but yeah, the only reason I'd like to have him in a movie would be like, to get him on the screen at all, If that was the thing that we got, then of course I'll be definitely happy with that. But yeah, definitely Netflix would be first. And I'd actually like to see a well-made animated series by Moon Knight up there as second or third. So Moon Knight, definitely one of them. The Question, do you know who The Question is, Connor?
No, he's a street level
DC character.
DC hero. He is very beloved.
Yeah.
But
he's a hero, is he? Yeah, well, I mean, obviously must be.
I think so.
Okay.
Maybe. Who knows? He may even appear in this Batman Munchron I'm reading.
Yeah. He's got no face. That's his defining feature. No face, which is pretty cool. And then you got Constantine.
He has an animated show confirmed. Actually, they reference that. They want a in a Vixen style that they would want to return in a Vixen style Constantine animated series, but they do have a Vixen style animated Constantine series coming. So
okay. What's a Vixen style? What's that?
It's basically set in they're basically 10-minute animated episode set in the Arrowverse.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
they I'm not sure whether they release them on TV or on their app, but I think they do get quite a bit of love. If you know the character the Ray,
I've heard of the Ray. Rebecca's mentioned him.
Yeah, he has a series coming up like that as well. So the son needs to do a bit of research, I think.
Yes. Oops. Yeah. Right.
But I do love Constantine. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Actually, I I don't know how it went over with fans, but I didn't mind the Keanu Reeves one. I know he looked really different. The movie in the early 2000s, I think.
I've never seen that was actually.
You haven't seen it?
No.
It's pretty good. I don't know if it might be dated now, but it was really. I ended up playing the Xbox game as well. I really enjoyed it. That's how much I enjoyed it. My flatmate at the time, we ended up just going, let's go check it out on Xbox. And we ended up playing it. It was really cool. Yep. So Constantine. Then obviously Big Mooney there. I'm just flicking through the article here. Then we've got Spawn.
His original animated show was cool. I like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I never watched it. I think it'd suit an animated series, definitely. I mean, he's just way out there. And again, budget-wise, and to make it kind of look authentic, what he does, if everything's animated, I think that would be pretty cool. And finally, this is someone I don't know, another DC person, Zatanna. Is she... she's a magician. That's
I like Zatanna. She has like a cool little mini-series coming, like about her past coming in DC, kind of like if anyone read Supergirl being super, that sort of, what do they call it? Premiere sort of release? I don't know what comics. I'm not sure why. I saw a podcast. I'm not very good at remembering comic book terms.
No worries. I don't do any research, so that's fine.
No, she has like a cool little prequel mini about her as like a teenager growing up, which could be a cool animated show. I think all of these would be cool, but
they'll be good.
Catch up on some of who these characters are.
Yeah, I mean, like Heroic Hollywood did it's a nice one of those little nice fan casting things. They picked 6 characters that could be in an animated show. There's heaps of them,
Oh, yeah.
If I had my way, it would be like Madrox, the Multiple Man as well. Get him in there anywhere. That'd be cool. But yeah, you can just pick and choose. There's so many characters out there. But it was good to see Mooney included in this one. So he seems to be very much kind of hovering, within the field of TV on screen wishes, so that's always got to be a good thing. So
our final piece of news.
Sorry. Apart from that, the only final piece of news was not news per se, but in particular more for our Australian loonies out there, because I'm not sure about the other countries. They may well have got them, but I just wanted to do a quick little plug on Destructo Design. A while ago, they released their Volume 2 package of designs for hoodies and for t-shirts, and one of them was for Moonlight. So one of our loonies, Matt, he finally received his in the post, and I've got to say, it looks so good, doesn't it? Far out. It looked exactly what was written on the tin, and it just looks perfect. So I've ordered one as well. I'm just still waiting, but after seeing Matt's post, I can't wait for it. So we'll chuck in the show notes as well a link to Destructo Designs. But they're like a small company. They do a lot of like pop culture designs for hoodies and for shirts. So if you're into Marvel, DC, anything, just even anime as well or manga, just check it out, and they do really cool designs. So we'll chuck that in the show notes for you. But that was the third little bit of news. Not much, but anything else that you came across, Connor, or no?
No, it's been it's a quiet week. We're still just waiting. Thank everyone who's tagging along for this long run in terms of news. I'm sure you guys are just as earger to hear about this new run as we are. Or Netflix.
Definitely. I mean, I came across also, Connor, a couple of articles on, again, who are the 5 actors you like to see as Moon Knight. I've come across them again, but I didn't put them in because, we've seen that a fair few times. And as mentioned, you can spectate till the cows come home. It's always fun to do, but I think we've covered that a couple of times anyway in the news. So they pop up every now and again, which is fun. I thought I'd leave it for this time.
Yeah, it seems like Punisher release date's still either October 13 or mid-November. Those are sort of our 2 options, so we're getting close to seeing some cabs in the Punisher.
Oh, definitely. And what's your preference for release date, Connor? Would you like to see it early, or would you like to wait?
Totally give it to me early.
Yeah. As soon as you can get that magnifying glass and start looking for cabs and guys with mustaches or big billionaires.
Bad mustaches.
Yeah, true. I'm kind of thinking I can wait till November only because I want to give enough attention to Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I don't want too many things coming in the way, and I already feel like movies to me, films are taking a back seat. I feel like Defenders for me was a big highlight this year, and the quality I find for Netflix shows has been really good, and so I tend to favour them a bit more than films. I enjoyed Spider-Man. Spider-Man was great.
Yeah. Do you think we'll get a Moon Knight cameo in Thor Ragnarok?
There might be a Khonshu one. How about that from the other void or the overvoid? You see all this cosmic.
Car?
Oh, how cool is that? You see a bird skull just flutter by. Yeah, no, sadly I don't think so. But we can only hope. So Well, having said that, we might move on to our next segment.
Yes.
Shall we head over the moon?
Ooh, he's done it again.
Mr. Segway King, eh? We were short of segways last episode.
We're bringing them back in a big way.
Bring them back. Yeah, yep.
Well, I suppose I shall kick off with the final issue of Incarnations, this little arc, Moon Knight Vol.8, Issue 9, Incarnations, Part 4 of 4. Released on the 7th of December 2016 with writer Jeff Lemire, penciled by the incredible team, Wilfredo Torres, Francisco Francavilla, James Stokoe, Greg Smallwood, with colours by Michael Garland on the Torres art, Francavilla and Stokoe colouring their own art, and Belair on the amazing Smallwood segment, are lettered amazingly once again by DC's Corey Petit, the cover by Greg Smallwood, and our editor, Jake Thomas.
Boom.
For our bare bones. Mr. Knight confronts his other personalities in New Egypt, and calls for unity despite the other personalities not wanting to relinquish their lives as individuals. The harsh truth that Space Knight Mark Spector, Jake Lockley, and Stephen Grant are but constructs of Mr. Knight's mind does not go down well with the trio, and the sudden disintegration of Space Mark thus instigates a fight between Jake Lockley and Mr. Knight. It's a fight for survival and the right to exist, and although Jake puts up a good struggle, the present dart from Mr. Knight and him returns him to dust. With two of his personalities now neutralized, Mr. Knight searches for Stephen Grant, his oldest personality construct, who had fled during the fight. Throughout New Egypt, Mr. Knight searches for Stephen, but it's not long before he finds him in an abandoned office. Stephen is almost submissive, and he pleads with Mr. Knight the question of his existence. Life memories like corn dogs and Coney Island with his dad seem all too real. Stephen is scared and unsure of what's to come. Mr. Knight explains to Stephen it was all very real. Stephen's existence was true, but it essentially came out of Mr. Knight. The subsequent alter egos which came later were a way to deal with his illness. As time went by, the alter egos began to emerge, and Mr. Knight began to lose who he really was, ultimately resulting in New Egypt. Stephen is afraid to die. Mr. Knight assures him he won't, and by accepting Mr. Knight's purpose to consolidate his personalities, Stephen Grant will always be alive with him. Stephen accepts, and in a warm embrace accepts his fate. Mr. Knight / Mark Spector is alone again, but now with a clear head and mind, he accepts that he is back in New Egypt with a new purpose, and he finally knows what must be done. He heads back to the hospital to kill Khonshu once and for all.
Yes, wow. Part
Big
4
issue.
of 4. Yeah. I mean, and it does kind of close itself out, but kind of gears up for the next one, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think... Yeah, it's kind of like a closing to what we've seen. It's kind of like... I mean, there's 3 arcs. Lemire really has set this up as almost a 3-act structure of the film.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
We've got the final battle in our sights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a massive construct, isn't it? Because he definitely has planned this all from the start, and as you say, the 3 arcs themselves act as 3 acts to a greater, bigger thing. But at the same time, the beauty of it is that each of them, this kind of ended with a nice bit of closure. It was a very resolved ending to this arc, because what we have are these personalities that are finally meeting together. Like they've finally been corralled together, and kind of slowly, almost, to coin a Madrox phrase, absorbed into Mr. Knight. So yeah, I thought it was a really good issue. Again, the artists they just hit it out of the park. And there was so much, I thought, empathy that Lemire still managed to give to each of the characters to actually make, when they do merge back, or when they do get reclaimed by Mr. Knight, it makes it all the more poignant.
Yeah, it's kind of what I love about Lemire. You know, Lemire's a great writer. If anything, he tackles everything with stuff bigger and, great action, great. But when it comes to what I think I love most about Lemire, and probably my favorite comic of all time, is his Essex County, which is like just a story of lives and in the town it occupies. And I think this issue just shows what an emotional and personal writer he is, and I love that so much.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of emotion in this. We'll get into it, but one of my favorite splash pages from this is that embrace between Stephen and Mr. Knight at the end. It was almost like an acceptance, but it was a sacrifice as well. It was really good stuff from Lemire. So let's kick it off. First, one of our 4 aspects I placed down as one of the main things is Mr. Knight taking back his personalities. And I thought, basically, what I touched upon just a bit earlier, I thought what was really great was that he fleshes out, in such a short time, fleshes out these personalities to actually make you empathetic towards them. So the first page with Space Knight Mark, it's just 4 panels, and he's talking about, hang on, I went through this crazy experience. Like, I've seen the Avengers and the X-Men turn to werewolves. I've seen friends and family turn, and that's even worse than them dying. I always think of like The Walking Dead. When you see your loved ones as zombies, you kind of see them turned as something else. And he talks about just how difficult that was, and the absurdity of, you're telling me it's not real? This is like telling you kind of that, your life up to this point was just kind of like meaningless, that it wasn't really real. All the emotions that you felt, all the pain and all the joy, that was just nothing. It was some other thing. So, Lemire defines these personalities. Again, with Stephen Grant towards the end, he defines him by Stephen Grant reflecting and going, "Oh, yeah, you mean those memories of having corn dogs at Coney Island with my dad? You're not saying that that's real?" And he was almost lamenting that, I can't believe it. These were fond memories. So Lemire adds these to the personalities, and it makes it all the more just effective when Mr. Knight has to reclaim them.
Yeah, I think that's probably my favorite part about this issue. That what could have essentially just been like narrative obstacles, collect the personalities, go off to fight Khonshu. You really feel sympathetic towards him. You're right. That whole thing about their lives being a lie and all that. It's almost sad. It's not almost. It is sad seeing them try to fight back, almost like against fate, and almost the cruel hand cast by this terrible world of New Egypt and what maybe Khonshu's created. Maybe it's all in his head.
Oh, it's so warped, isn't it? I mean, at this stage, still, you don't know what New Egypt is. It's a conglomeration of New York and Egypt, but for sure it can't be real, right? As a reader, you're thinking, no way. Like, New York can't be overrun with pyramids and sand. So what is it? Is it like, is it in Mark's head? Is it really a construct of Khonshu, some weird reality? Because remember, this kind of goes beyond space and time, apparently. So it's hard.
I was about to say, I was like going to say, in New Egypt, made by like Khonshu, and I had to take a step back to realize you don't know that. Like, even having completed the run, you still don't know. And what Bemis is doing next, you still don't know. Like, it's Lemire back at it again.
It is. It's a very kind of snake eating itself. That's how I think it is. There's no end point because you just don't know. How about one of your aspects, Connor?
I think we'll talk about the artist. We're talking about personality. We've spoken over the last 5 issues, if you include issue 5, which includes the rotating artists and personalities. What we've seen and what we've always talked about is that, like, distinct art, art and the way we see it change, and how over the last few issues you would have heard us talking about how much more seamlessly it blends, and what the colorists do. And this issue was the apex, being in one location, one character, the art just moves so perfectly from personality to personality to personality that you don't even notice. You notice the first point where it changes, but at the final leg of this issue, you basically see the end of Mark Spector Moon Knight, the space captain, dying to stand, and then you see the jump to Francovir's art, and the way with the backgrounds and the coloring, the way Francovir's then turns to Torres, and then the final page with Smallwood back on art. There's almost like the tiniest of indicators as you flow and just so naturally accept the new art style. And I think it's just like what's been built up, and I think it's so perfect.
There's I'm looking through the pages now. There is a really, as you say, a real blend of the art, and I can see it. The first thing that pops out for me are the colors. Now, remember, as you mentioned, Francavilla does his own colors, Stokoe does his own colors, Garland does Torres's, and Belair does Smallwood's. They all start to marry together. So Belair's gives New Egypt a greeny, kind of green-grey feel. And you see for the first time, Francavilla, he actually follows up on that. Many times we've seen him with the blues and yellows and a bit of the pinks to give his style. He's starting to succumb, I guess, to the New Egypt style, and so of course for consistency he adds it in. What I did find interesting though was that Space Mark, his colouring Stokoe still maintains a purpley pink hue, so he's very different from the others.
And I think that ties into the point where, Mark, Mr. Knight here, he very specifically says that he doesn't even know where this Space Knight came from, and that basically he's just he's almost like an unfinished sketch. Being too different from the other Jake Lockley and Stephen Grant personalities that we've known for years, I think that art's almost, again, like an indicator of just how strange and just unknown he is from the world of Moon Knight.
Yeah, totally agree, because for any Moon Knight fan, this is a given. Like the Space Knight Mark is just something totally out of left field. Like we know Mark Spector, the mercenary, but Space Knight is definitely something that was just created during this particular run. So next to no history at all. And obviously the most disposable. I wonder, kind of Mr. Knight. We call him Mr. Knight. Would that Mr. Knight? It would be Mark Spector as well, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Spector. Yeah, because Mr. Knight is a newish character as well, introduced by Warren Ellis in Volume 7. So Mr. Knight's still new. So although, yeah, I guess for this purpose we had addressed him as Mr. Knight because we did have a Mark Spector, but Mark Spector here is a new Mark Spector, which is the Space Knight. So, yeah, if you're still with us, Loonies, you're doing well. So even the greens go on to Michael Garland's colouring for Wilfredo Torres, and you see Mr. Knight / Mark Spector looking for Stephen Grant, and as he goes through New Egypt, he finds him, and it's not until he actually goes into the office where he finds Stephen that the hues change to a blue. Once
again, Smallwood carries on that blue into the first panel of his next page before he re-enters the Green Knight. I don't know.
Yeah,
New
exactly.
Egypt.
Back into the New Egypt. New Egypt apparently is very green. So great art here. And you mentioned, Connor, one of the aspects about Torres, right? And it being his best work to date.
Yeah, I'll go on to my second aspect then. Our third one, before we get to Ray's final and our fourth aspect, that I think this issue is Torres's best work. My favourite part of the issue where, we see a big revelation that the Stephen Grant personality was the first and the most personal and close to Mark Spector as a person, and I think the writing in the scene is so powerful and emotional as Mark confronts Stephen in this very sad but accepting goodbye, and I think the facial and emotional body language Torres does here is my favourite of this entire issue, and just sticks out so much, and it's just absolutely beautiful. There's in this scene, this art, there's no better art here than to go with what Lemire writes and what's happening before our eyes.
Yeah, it's a testament to him, and obviously they are one and the same person. So yeah, definitely Torres's art is really good in conveying how much they look alike, but at the same time how different they are. I mean, you've got this small thing of Mark Spector having a few whiskers and a band-aid over his nose. Stephen Grant is a lot more dapper, and he's never been a fighter, right? So I think the way that Mark / Mr. Knight has approached him is a very, very good way, because Stephen Grant, Mark Spector is a mercenary. Jake Lockley seems to have violent tendencies, and Stephen Grant though is basically like a businessman, a producer. So he's got no skills in fighting, and it's because of this that I think that Mark / Mr. Knight kind of approaches him in another way. It approaches more to his emotions, and it's very touching in this, I think, in this Torres bit, where he just talks how, look, you're my closest personality. I created you first. I needed someone. I needed a friend when I was young, and I created you, Stephen. I also think that this bit with Wilfredo Torres, just to go on it a little further, is that I think this bit of writing by Lemire is a really perfect and a really sensitive way to approach and highlight mental illness in general. I think it was a really sensitive way to do it. By kind of going through this story, he also says, you've always been with me. We share our lives together. You were the first. You came to me when I was very young. At first, I thought you were an imaginary friend that I would play with when I was home alone at home. And then he said, then we weren't playing together. I was with you. Then I'd be me again for a while. So anyway, Lemire he goes through, and from what I imagine, is what happens to someone with a dissociative disorder. So yeah, really good writing from Lemire.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I was talking about before, just how my favourite writing of Lemire is always the most personal and touching, and this issue was no exception.
Yeah, so he's done it very well, I think. My final or fourth aspect I thought from this issue is again with Stephen, and it basically this was a segue into it. I guess it was his how Stephen was is very important to Mark Spector, and was his first other personality. As we mentioned, the newest one, which was Space Knight Mark, he dissolved first because he was the most expendable and the least defined, as you mentioned, Connor. And I guess how Spector reveals that Stephen was his first companion, and it was his coping mechanism for his illness. And there's something very touching with that. And then when you see Stephen finally come around, and although he must be scared out of his wits, because here's this strange guy that looks like him saying, "Oh, I'm essentially going to reclaim everything from you. You're going to return to dust." He's scared out of his wits, but he accepts it. And yeah, that's what makes that final splash page for this act, when they hug each other, really impactful.
Yeah, and I think, actually, just to go on to a point you brought up about the different personalities and Jake Lockley with the upcoming Bemis run, actually, that Bemis referenced that Jake Lockley was sort of the baddest and, most dangerous out of the three main personas outside of Moonlight of
yeah, he did, right.
Mark Spector, and this issue kind of concreted that. He was the one under the guise of Moonlight who put up the fight.
It does, doesn't it? It's we discussed before, my opinion was that Mark Spector would have been the most dangerous and violent one. I mean, he comes from a mercenary background. But yeah, Lemire definitely plays on Jake Lockley, who's dressed up as Moonlight, and the last issue as well. He was the one that kind of had the violent tendencies to break free of the interrogation room and, to confront Midnight Man. So yeah, that was a good pickup. Just a few notes from this issue though as well. I thought again, going back to Stephen Grant and what is real and not. I put in here like a dream within a dream, within a dream. It's kind of like Inception. What I found was very cool was that so we got New Egypt, which we don't know is if it's like the reality or not. But within that reality, we have Stephen Grant who's come through this door saying, "Oh, this is exactly like the production that I'm doing for a movie for Marvel Studios." So he references kind of our reality, but what his reality is reflected in New Egypt, which may or may not be a reality. So it's all so kind of in on itself. I just found that really great. Yeah, I mean, again, just a little note on the artwork. I thought that was brilliant. I mean, we've talked about that. There's a little mention of Marlene, and again, how she kind of saw the wheels falling off with Mark losing control of his personalities. So again, we get that consistent with history of Marlene being the more aware person, or being the one that is always kind of looking out for Mark. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, the other note was the emotive monologue by Space Mark, which I mentioned before, about it really humanises him. The big splash of Stephen Grant and Mr. Knight embracing. And yeah, there's that little question I thought I put to you, Connor, about Mr. Knight as the dominant personality. Is that Mark Spector or not? And I think we'd agree that it probably is, right?
Yeah, which is interesting, because I don't know. I think going back to the previous run, Volume 7, with Ellis and Wood and Bunn, the way that run's positioned, and we see Moon Knight in sort of a very, alone and sort of unwell and dangerous state. Would you say in that run?
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, you do sort of see Mr. Knight as a prominent personality. So it's quite possible that between this one and Lemire, and as we head into Bemis, it's possible that Mr. Knight and Mark Spector almost just became one, you know. Maybe Mr. Knight isn't as much a personality anymore as he just is the one person now instead of being so separate from him, like Jake Lockley, Moon Knight, and Stephen Grant.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. It's a bit weird because in the story, like in this story at least, Mark's talking about how merging the personalities was a problem. Like how they all started merging together and he didn't know what was real or not, and he lost the identity of himself. So I always kind of think about that. But you're right, exactly as you say. It seems as though merging them counterintuitively is what is the end goal. So I don't know. It's a bit loose in that regards. But maybe it's more like merging them, still having them, but having them under control, kind of thing. So instead of like literally merging their personalities together. Yeah, but anyway, I don't want to give too much away because we all know what happens in the last arc. So, it's still I'm still perplexed at it. But it was very good, and look, we can't not mention the final page as well, kind of, which was it kind of gets geared up for the next arc.
This is almost like the most remembered photo of like most famous now photo of Moon Knight over the past few years. You see this picture cropping around a lot. The adjusting the tie, ready to go into battle.
Yeah, very sure of himself. Very kind of scary looking as well because he's got a mask on. So he kind of looks quite deadly. But yeah, brilliantly drawn by Greg Smallwood.
I love the page behind as well, where you just sort of see Mark after this big ordeal, and he's sort of face resting and feeling the Moon Knight after almost like being exhausted and gathering his strength. It's just wonderful work by Smallwood. Love that page.
It is, as he looks up into the moon and almost basks in the moonlight. Kind of alludes to again, no spoilers, but towards the next arc, if you remember, Connor. Anyway, there's some brilliant panels there which kind of reference this, I think. So. Yeah, very cool. Crescent Dart ratings, Connor. What would you give this one to round off Incarnations?
No, I think a definite 6 out of 5. I think a lot of the last issues have sort of been, the celebration of what makes Moon Knight an incredible action comic. This is almost the complete 180 of being just as amazing, but with action driven by dialogue. Yeah, I think it's just perfect. I think it's definitely my favorite issue of this arc.
Yeah. I'd give it a 6 out of 5 as well. Yeah. I think I gave a 5 out of 5 for the last issue, which I really enjoyed. But this,
I don't remember.
Yeah, but this one's got everything again. I mean, like I said with the last issue, but it really delves into, it really humanizes all the personalities, and that's what I found really, really strong about this issue. Also, the way that Jeff Lemire treats the topic of mental illness, I think, was very well done here. So, and of course, I mean, we're almost taking for granted the artwork, but the artwork was just immense in this. So, you put them all together, and there's a bit of action as well with Jake Lockley attacking Mr. Knight. So you get a little bit of action, but this was I thought, a really intelligent way to finish the arc, so I've got to give it more than what I gave the last issue, so 6 out of 5 for it all the way.
Heck yeah. Well,
fantastic.
From one amazing issue to the next.
Yeah, so for our next Over the Moon review, we have Moon Knight Vol.1, issue 24, and it's titled Scarlet in Moonlight. So this was released the 1st of October 1982, and we have the classic team of writer Doug Munch, penciler Bill Sienkiewicz. We have colours by Christy Skeel and Joe Rosen doing the lettering, and the editor is Denny O'Neil. So, what we have for the bare bones. In the South Bronx, a shady deal is going down behind closed doors at an undisclosed restaurant. Just as a final agreement has been made involving a Mr. Manny Sindone, the shadowy men are assaulted by a lone figure armed with a crossbow. None appear to make it out alive, except for the hapless waiter who runs out onto the street. High above, Moonlight surveys the neighbourhood, silently wondering what it was exactly that drew him to the South Bronx. He hears the waiter scream, "Murder!" and promptly heeds the call. Moonlight's agility and determination proves to no avail, as he only manages to catch a glimpse of the figure whilst giving chase from the scene of the crime. Narrowly dodging an arrow, Moonlight is left with only one thing he's sure of, that the killer is a woman. Detective Flint and his squad examine the crime scene as Moonlight returns after having unsuccessfully apprehended the suspect. Flint confirms the victims were all tied to crime, and Moonlight spots the calling card of stained glass Scarlet scrawled on the wall. He bids adieu to Detective Flint and races to the old cathedral where he last encountered stained glass Scarlet. Not finding her there, Moonlight's detective skills lead him to the cemetery, where he finds Scarlet there looking over her son's grave. Stained glass Scarlet explains how Mr. Manny Sindone was responsible for her son's spiral into crime and madness. She wants vengeance against Sindone, but more importantly, Stained glass Scarlet declares war on crime. Moonlight, left stunned, lets Stained glass Scarlet go, and returns home to Marlene to ponder the moral conflict which vexes him. Insensitive to Marlene's own suffering at the recent loss of her brother, Mark leaves with Frenchie in the Mooncopter to catch up with Stained glass Scarlet. He finds her at Northbrook, New Jersey, stalking the building with Sindone in it. Before she gets any closer, Moonlight intercepts Scarlet and pleads with her not to follow through with her intent. Sindone's men spot the two, and in the melee, Scarlet escapes, leaving Moonlight to ward off the goons. Scarlet enters the building, killing all those in her wake, and she reaches Sindone with her eye on the prize. Sindone manages to pull a gun on Scarlet, and at that moment, Moonlight catches up with Scarlet and draws a crescent dart at Sindone. In an agonizing choice, Moonlight chooses to disarm Sindone with his crescent dart, giving Scarlet the opportunity to shoot her crossbow and kill Sindone, thus completing her mission. She flees, with Moonlight giving chase. At the train tracks, Moonlight, in one final effort, throws his truncheon at Scarlet's legs, hoping to stop her. He misses, and wonders if he missed on purpose. So,
wow, yeah.
This was a ripper of an issue, Connor. It was a great choice.
Yeah, this is Moon Knight to me when I think of Doug Munch and Bill Sienkiewicz. This is it. You know, this whole feeling, incredible art, poetic writing, just sort of the mood and the dark atmosphere. This is just 100% Moon Knight to me. It's got Munch written all over it. It's just tragic figures. It's very street level. There's nothing crazy about it. Yeah.
And it's great to see Stained glass Scarlet back, albeit in a killing mood.
Apparently 1 year, so if people don't go bad after 10 issues, then they go bad after a year, so...
That's true. Yeah. So she's almost turned into like a Punisher, right? She's declared war on crime. But she has an agenda for this issue, and one that's quite personal. So... Connor, how about we'll grab one of your first aspects.
Ooh, where to start? I think because you have one as well that we can link into this. Talk about Fasanera, Stained Glass Scarlet, and basically how in this issue, both as a character and as a narrative device for Moon Knight, she basically becomes his Punisher. You know, Moon Knight plays dirty, but he's by no means an outrageous murdering machine.
He's not cold-blooded, no.
Yeah, and here's the issue that we really see Moon Knight having to face. You know, people out there wanting revenge so much they'll take the law into their own hands and do the dirty work that Moon Knight won't take himself to, because he hasn't shown up against Punisher, really much anyone else in the Marvel universe at this point, outside of like that issue with Daredevil before, was it?
Daredevil, yeah, issue 13, I think. But that was just like a one and done. It was very, it was very, very short. But yeah, he's coming up against his own Punisher here in Fasanera. Very, very interesting because I'm thinking, look, you know, if Khonshu in the later series, as we see, if Khonshu's the little devil on his shoulders, he'd be loving Fasanera. You know, he'd probably be wanting for Fasanera to be the avatar of vengeance, not Mooney, because Khonshu wants blood. So we have this conflict here, and this is the conflict that Moon Knight faces with Khonshu as well. So this is a conflict that Moon Knight has with Fasanera about her wanting to just kill and get rid of crime. And that this is highlighted mostly in the I think in the cemetery where they meet up. They have a good conversation there, which is basically highlights you know, whether or not killing is justified or not.
Yeah, I think that's where. Let me pull up some specific quotes, but I think after he talks to that whole cemetery scene as he's going through the church is where, you know, that incredible poetic writing of Munch takes his effect, and there's so many incredible lines talking about. I love how he talks about you know, the cathedral remains the same. Then when time and neglect have long since worked their dark miracles, how can a single year improve on squalor so exquisitely wrought? Yeah, really good writing from Munch. Yeah, fantastic. There's also another one I'm looking at here, which kind of shows a darkness to Scarlet. Moonlight goes, they're basically talking about killing and what, and Moonlight goes, and you think that crossbow is any less loathsome than a gun? And she goes, yes, it's a matter of degrees. At least my chosen weapon isn't quite so impersonal, nor nearly so cowardly. So she almost has a, not a fetish, but like, she values that whoever she kills, it has to be personal, which is kind of a very morbid and dark thing to have. So, so they struggle, and it's funny with this one, this conversation here, that Moon Knight just lets her go. Yeah, I think that's a very strange thing to do after, like, she's pretty much confessed that she'll be killing. I don't know whether he's stunned at her openness about it, or whether he's shocked at. And this will tie into one of the aspects I had, which is Manny Sindone. Maybe he was just shocked at hearing her connection to him. Yeah, it was a real sort of, you know, the old feminine touch back then. But I think just generally, it's the real sort of moral conflict. And then he goes home and, as you put quite insensitively, talking to Marlene, comes to realize his almost stupidity with how he's not seeing the situation, was blinded by, you know, not wanting to see Fasanera hurt. And he is blind. I mean, poor Marlene is obviously suffering, and this is something that's happened between, you know, issues that we've read, 14 and 24. Her brother, who we featured, we reviewed in issue 12 with Morpheus. He's kicked the bucket, apparently, and Marlene's suffering, but in typical Mark Spector fashion, insensitive to it all, and he just wanders off, going, "Yeah, you're right. Why settle for either?" So he's pretty ignorant to the whole fact. But what I was heading towards with one of my aspects was this character, Candyman Sindone, who's a big boss in this, and I think he's he's a big bad in this issue. So, you know, if you think Stained Glass Scarlet is bad, Munch creates Sindone, and we're just made to really loathe this guy. He's pretty bad.
Stained glass skull in the cemetery. She mentions at the age of 18, Manny Sindone, he jumped a 14-year-old girl and cut her throat and stuffed her in the trunk of a car, all because she didn't want to go out with him. And then at the age of 22, he bombed 7 shop owners who refused to pay him protection money. So he's a pretty bad dude. And to top it all off, that's why they call him Candyman Sindone. He actually got Mad Dog Fasanera, Stained Glass Scarlet's son, onto heroin, and kind of led him towards his path of crime. So he's a pretty bad figure in this, and I think it's important that Munch made such a bad villain, so we counter that with Stained Glass Scarlet, and we're kind of on her side, I mean, because for all intents and purposes, she's a killer herself, so she's pretty bad. But if you have someone who's even worse, it puts things in perspective.
Yeah, and I like also sort of that. Well, also always the comic book villains of, getting away with it. But that is sort of, I do sort of love the very almost not so much generic but grounded and unsuper villainy nature of this villain. He's not the Kingpin. He still hasn't got superpowers. He's just a terrible man doing terrible things on Wall Street.
Yeah, that's one of the scariest things, isn't it? Sometimes the scariest villains are those that ring the most true, and he could very well be a Punisher villain, And if we think this was written in 1982, this is quite dark. I mean, talking about slitting throats and trying to jump a girl and getting people addicted to heroin. This is pretty heavy stuff. So. So again, Munch is not afraid to pull the punches here, and I think this harks back, Connor, to our episode 0, when we discussed about Munch and his want to tell more adult tales, and how the direct-to-market sales for Moonlight. So the Moonlight comics were no longer just available on newsstands. You can actually, I think they were only available in specialist stores, i.e. comic book stores. And what Munch said that allowed him to actually tell more adult tales, and it actually had less ads, so he was able to expand his story a bit more. And I think this is a prime example of that.
For sure, it is. Yeah, just. I think I love about the story just being just generally without supernatural, just that touch of
yeah. This is why I love street level stuff. This is like a perfect example.
Yeah.
It's just they're interesting characters. They're not over the top, but yeah, it's definitely a study in like evil in human nature, which is really cool. How about your second aspect, Connor?
Yeah, let's talk about the most wonderful part, and one of the reasons I wanted to jump to this.
Absolutely.
Shinkovich's art. This is, Shinkovich just throughout this entire series just got better and better, but this is the part I love the most. And with the incredible colorist of Shield, first name,
Christy Scheele, I think.
Shield, yeah, Christy.
Yeah. Yeah, oh my gosh, Connor, you are not wrong when you told me there is such a leap here. Like, Shinkovich has always been a great artist, but even great artists obviously mature and they get better. And looking at issue 14, what we did a couple of episodes ago, and then looking at this, oh my god, it's not only in the detail, like he's, again, my fascination with the architecture, but the way he lays out, not so much the panels, but just what's within the panel itself. If we look at the first page, showing the South Bronx, what we have is a blood red moon, a full moon. We have almost this vampiric image, vision of Stained Glass Scarlet's eyes on the top, and then a really down and dirty Bronx neighborhood with. It looks like a hell of a lot of washing out there. But yeah, this sort of stuff, Connor, is brilliant. And what I got from it as well was the angles, the perspectives that he does.
Yep.
Oh, he really is starting to come into his own.
And this is where I really bring Sheil into it too, because her colouring, I think, is one of the real parts that really does make it pop. And I think the real example, anyone who's getting their chance to read this, sadly, this isn't in the Epic Collection or on Marvel Unlimited or Comixology. You really have to own the issue or the Essential Collections.
Yep.
Which sadly doesn't have that before, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, it's black and white, so it's a different kind of tone, but yeah.
Yeah, I love I think it's pages 9 to 15 after, as Moon Knight explains to Flint, you sort of see this almost collage of different people and scenes.
Yeah.
Just going one over the other, and you can really see, how things are brought to the forefront. Fascinera is behind a smoking Flint.
Yep. And how about her face? What a really nice portrait by Sienkiewicz. Really good.
And then, my favorite bit in the cemetery with the way the shadows work, and we see these almost these creatures of the night, just shaded in the way that reflects their personalities. And my favorite panel is one with full face of a Fascinera with a very distinct white and black Moon Knight standing behind her as they begin their argument about morality. And
picked it. I thought that's one that you would like, because her face is so real. It's so realistic. It just shows Sienkiewicz's skill in it, and to have Moon Knight there. I love the colours from Skill here, the purples coming out. It's almost like, because I think he catches up with her right about around dusk, so you would get those kind of colours as the sun goes down. But really, really nice. And there's one that I actually I put up on our Instagram account, but it's page 16 with a bit of a montage there showing Candyman Sindone converting Mad Dog or Joe into Mad Dog Fascinera. It's quite terrifying there with with his red face. But what I love is very simple here. The panel on the right with the silhouette of Moon Knight just behind the metal fence to the cemetery. I don't know. It just looks so artistic. It's really good.
Absolutely fantastic. And, just relying on that sort of setup and colour that Sienkiewicz and Sheil bring together. There's no definable features of Moon Knight outside of his, a rough silhouette and his cape and the red of the moon and sky.
And even going on, like, he's actually, I'll go on about it again, but his architecture, the art of his architecture, if you look at all the buildings that he does, none of them are like generic or just kind of an afterthought. There's a lot of care and meticulation into each of the buildings. So even if you go to when we head to Northbrook, New Jersey, where the thugs and the criminals are, even that is a well detailed bit of architecture of a mansion in the woods, I think. But yeah, very, very cool indeed.
It's pretty amazing that Sienkiewicz managed this at a month-to-month rate for 38 issues without break, I think.
Oh gosh, yeah, definitely, and a longer comic book as well, because without the less ads, we've got here I think 28 pages, whereas a typical comic would be about 23 pages, I think, back in the day. So he's got a bit more to work with, and still the time frame. So yeah, really good, really great faces by Sienkiewicz. And also the telltale, we've got here that we mentioned it before, how he likes to use the street lights, or lights in the distance, to give that kind of mood. And you see it again, even at the last page with the train coming. It just kind of sets a mood. It's very, very typical of like the Moon Knight world, I think. So that actually.
Yeah, we combine two of our aspects in one when talking about Fascinera.
Yeah. So the Moon Knight's connection with Stained Glass Scarlet, it's starting to bubble a bit more, I think, as well. And there's even a mention here of a ESP connection. So I don't know what Monch is thinking about how he connects these two really disparate characters together, but there seems to be some sort of bond between them. I mean, even it goes back to Moon Knight at the beginning of the comic going, oh, I wonder why I am in the South Bronx. You know, is there something else that has kind of driven him there? And it could well be Stained Glass Scarlet. So there's this connection that they have, and it's explored even more in Matteus's Scarlet Redemption in Mark Spector Moon Knight, which incidentally, Connor, I found out DeMatteis is also the writer of Kraven's Last Hunt by Spider-Man. So a very dark tale, and one day we'll have to review Scarlet Redemption. It's kind of got that vibe as well. It's very not surreal, but it's very very dark and cerebral, I guess. Very similar to Kraven's Last Hunt in that sense. I thought that was worth mentioning as an aspect, Moon Knight's connection with Stained Glass Scarlet. So she's definitely a very interesting figure.
Do we ever in Mark Spector Moon Knight a Resurrection War?
Yeah.
And Resurrection War. Is there any mention again of that ESP connection?
Fate? Fate. Yeah, in Mark Spector, there definitely is.
Okay, cool.
There's some sort of psychic bond that they have, but you know, for the life of me, I can't see where the connection lies. You know, generally there's a, you know, let's say with Moon Knight and werewolves, of course, you got the moon and werewolves. There's a bit of a connection there, but with Stained Glass Scarlet, I don't know. He just seems to have, and in the wiki we did that spotlight. Character spotlight of Stained Glass Scarlet. She has this psychic bond, but it's never really explained.
Yeah.
So, actually, just before we end there, just a couple of notes here. I've got to make mention, a little shout out to Detective Flint.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah, I love him, and there's a bit of comic relief from him actually here with him trying to open up the bag of crisps. So his diet hasn't changed, hasn't gotten any better. He was smoking and drinking coffee, and now he's eating oily bags of crisps. So
and smoking
and smoking still. So so he's in it again. It kind of lends a bit more of a noir kind of detective feel. The Mooncopter again shows itself.
So terrible.
And it's a really terrible design still. I thought 10 issues on we would have gotten something better, and I'm sorry to say, Connor, it does look a little phallic.
Yeah, maybe the Mooncopter is the real one that went bad after 10 issues.
I think so. It takes 10 issues to actually turn a copter bad. So that was a really, really terrible. So I'm just waiting for the day where whoever it is redesigns it. So yeah, come on. The opening page was brilliant, as we've discussed. The little pop culture reference of Zorro. So we have Stained Glass Scarlet signing off her murders with an S on the wall. First with lipstick, and towards the end when she kills Sindone, she does it with her own blood. So she's got a little calling card.
And Moon Knight's cheekiness of and one other thing, someone doesn't know how to spell Zorro.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty cheeky, and so he's a bit of a cheek machine. He's not totally all brooding, which is pretty cool. Another bit of notes there I haven't actually got written down, but I've got the page open. Moon Knight's glider cape is used to... I forget, from time to time, I forget that he can actually like fly, in the sense that he uses his cape to ride on the winds. But he does in this issue. And again, Sienkiewicz depicts it as a crescent moon as well, which is, your typical Moon Knight. What else have we got? We got a couple of Marlene's brother's death, which popped up in between these issues. And one of the little goofs I thought, Connor, as well, was I reread the issue as well. There's no mention. Moon Knight does not get information pertaining to where this criminal syndicate meeting is going to be held in Northbrook, New Jersey.
It just shows up, yeah.
It never mentioned. He has a conversation with Stained Glass Scarlet in the cemetery. She knows where it is. He doesn't. And he lets her go. And then he goes back to see Marlene, and then he gets Frenchie, let's go in the phallic Mooncopter, and they know where to go to Northbrook, New Jersey. How does that happen? Is it ESP? Could well be. I don't know. It might be a mistake of Munch, or it could be a subtle ESP reference. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where is Sindone? Where does he live? Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it was a great pick, Connor. It was really good. Really enjoyed it. And let's get into Crescent Dart ratings. What would you give it?
I think a definite. If I gave Stained Glass, what did I give Stained Glass Skull? Was that a 4 out of 5?
Oh, it's hard to remember. I think you gave it a 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I'd probably give this a definite 4.5. I think it's just an incredibly strong issue. I love art, obviously, the poeticness. I think it's just a perfect street level grounded issue. No massive scale, no supernatural. Just these characters and their moral conundrums and their problems.
Yeah, it was a really good. I really enjoyed it, and again, have to thank you for this recommendation. I will give it 4.1333 reoccurring, only because I'm giving myself very little room to rate. So I've got to get into decimals. Yeah, I reckon it was a really good issue, ramped up with Sinkovich's art. I think it as you say, he just took it up another level, and I always enjoy Doug Moench's writing. Stained Glass Scarlet, always an interesting figure. Look, there were a couple of holes there with how Moon Knight knew where to go in New Jersey, but on a whole, how he defines his characters, how he kind of in a short time describes Candyman Sindone and where he's coming from, and there's even a short recap of Stained Glass Scarlet's history. It was all very interesting, and at the end as well, we forgot to make a little quick mention of the end of how Moon Knight almost purposely or subconsciously kind of lets her go. So again, tying back to their bond, which they seem to have, or he has some sort of sympathy towards her. Maybe he's a bit smitten by her. I mean, she's a fine-looking lady. So yeah, 4.133333. So yeah, that was great. So 2 great issues again, Loonies. I hope you enjoyed reading them as well. If you could get a hold of them, like we mentioned, Essential Collection will have issue 24. If you don't have the single issue itself, otherwise we're going to get onto it, aren't we? Kind of Marvel Unlimited. Try to get it on there.
Yeah, we'll be asking the powers that be.
The powers that be. So yeah, no, very good. Okay, so what we'll have next phase, which I'm starting to call next week, we'll be looking at Lemire's issue 10. So new arc called Death and Rebirth. It's part 1 of 5. And we'll be doing, returning to our format, as we do with each beginning of an arc. We'll be going panel by panel, so I cannot wait to get into that one. And also we'll be hopefully joined again by our third co-host, Rebecca. So looking forward to chatting with her as well about this great issue.
Cannot wait. And we've got this plan coming up. Who knows when we'll sprinkle it into our episodes? But we're going to be doing a big character spotlight on Bushman.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the big, one of the main villains and rivals of Moon Knight. And look, if Max Bemis is talking about the big bad, about having the truth or the sun god there, we've got to at least cover Bushman. Before we get cracking with the Bemis run. So, yep, looking forward to getting into that as well. Yeah. We also have another little segment here, fondly called a spectacle, which is a little shout out that we'll do. So I got onto our Facebook group and spoke to Connor as well, and I just want to give a shout out to Vengeance Unbound. It's a Ghost Rider podcast, so there's a tentative connection there with Moon Knight. If you look at like Midnight Suns and Dark Street level heroes. But anyway, Vengeance Unbound is a very cool Ghost Rider podcast. It's hosted by Chris Munn and Brian Biggie, and actually Chris, I believe, he's had a blog on Ghost Rider for over 10 years now, and they've just cracked into doing podcasts. So I think they're on episode 14, so relatively new and easy to catch up on. I'm on episode 3, looking forward to it, and they're really entertaining to listen to. So yeah, check it out, guys. We'll put it in the show notes as well, the details, but if you just look up Vengeance Unbound, a Ghost Rider podcast, you should be able to find them. Any other shout-outs there for you, Connor?
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into Vengeance Unbound. I know nothing about Ghost Rider. I only read the Robbie Reyes run. Keep meaning to read the Jason Aaron run. And I guess I better go back and review some other great ones. But also, one of our great Looney listeners and in the group, Joel Lewis, actually did a review of the Lemire issue we covered on nerdsthatgeek.com. He a massive, almost essay-like review of Moonlight issue 9, Incarnations Part 4. We'll link that in the show notes. Find it there. It's a great read.
Yeah, Joel's what I call one of the Khonshu level loonies. He's a really dedicated fan. And if you're on the group or not, be sure to try and hit him up with a bit of a chat. He's a very nice fellow, and he loves his Moon Knight. One of the last Spectre calls I'd like to shout out is to one of our newest members. I think just today he's joined. His name's Mike, and he's on the Facebook group, and he posted up his collection, which is a massively impressive collection, I must say. He's got literally wall to wall of slab versions of important issues from Moonlight, ranging from Volume 1 to Volume 8. I think I saw there was the Lemire issue 1, and it actually had a little sketch done by Greg Smallwood on there as well, and that's been slabbed and just looks brilliant. He's also got some figurines and some other paraphernalia there, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Mike, and I'd also want to just give this opportunity to say, Loonies, if you want, please post up your collections, and we'll be sure to shout you out on the show. Yeah, we love seeing it. It just amazes me the level of fandom for Moon Knight fans out there, and we've got a swathe of really, really cool Looney fans in the group. So, yep, I put it to you, Loonies. If you can post up your collections, we'll definitely give you a shout out, and we can share the love.
Heck yeah, loving the group. If you want to find that group, it is Into the Night, a Moon Knight fan base on Facebook, which is facebook.com/groups/Into-the-Night. And if you want to find our blog, of course, where you've most likely found this podcast, we are internetpodcast@wordpress.com. You can email us questions, thoughts, reviews, anything.
Yeah.
We love hearing from you. I'm going to read it out on the show if you want. Fantastic. Yep. moonnightpodcast@gmail.com. Our Facebook page is Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. Facebook.com/ITK Moon Knight. We have Instagram as well. ITK Moon Knight. Find us at our Twitter handle at ITK Moon Knight. Our Tumblr, Night Shifts.
Yep, we've gone a bit crazy with it all, Looney. So I'm sure you can find us. Look, the main thing, if you, as Connor said, if you hit up into the night podcast.wordpress.com, there are links to all the other social medias that we have there, and we're available on all the good podcast catches as well. So please give us a listen, tell your friends, and give us a rating if you want. We'd really love it. But by no means an obligation. So thank you once again, Loonies, for listening to us. This has been awesome. Episode 9, we're one short of hitting the double digits, Connor. Well, officially hitting the double digits. It's been a great time reviewing these comics.
Absolutely fantastic. I hope you'll catch us here next week with our panel by panel review of Moon Knight issue 10.
And and that's the only one, isn't it?
Yeah, big panel by panel.
Yeah, that would be great. And fingers crossed we'll get Rebecca. So we'll speak to her people and she'll speak to our people. Hopefully we'll get that sorted. But in the meantime, Loonies, farewell, and may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.